Hi, I'm Dan Riegler from Apothecary's Garden, and today I want to talk to you about using your local spruce and pine resins to make winter medicine. Over the years, I've been asked over and over again by customers who buy materials in the shop, what do I do with it? Or how do I use it? We've been using pine, spruce, and fir resin, tree resins in general, since the beginning of civilization. We've used them as adhesives, as medicine, perfume, and in cosmetics. You don't have to use exotic resins like frankincense and myrrh. Our local resins are just as effective. They're there for us. Saps are the nutrients that flow through the tree and sustain the tree, whereas oleo resins, they're created in special ducts just under the bark called trauma ducts, and when the tree is injured, the ducts create these oleo resins. Now, oleo resins basically means resin acids and the oleo, which are volatile or essential oils. The essential oils give resin mobility so it can flow out of the tree. We can buy pure oleo resins like pine and spruce, or we can collect them ourselves from trees that grow around us. It's always important to not damage the trees, not take more than we need, and be considerate of the trees and of the land. If you slice off a slab of bark to collect some resin, it damages the tree and it makes it vulnerable to insects. We have a nasty insect called a borer. They get under the bark of the tree, they lay their eggs, and then when the larvae hatch, they eat away at the tree. So, I mean, if I was a tree, I wouldn't be very happy about that. Make sure you don't take it all. Leave a layer protecting the tree. So you might ask, well, how can I use sap? Sap's so sticky, it's just going to stick to my skin. Well, as soon as we blend oleo resins with vegetable oils, there's the regular vegetable carrier oil like olive oil or canola oil or coconut oil, the oil neutralizes the stickiness and the oil acts as a solvent. So in theory, we could just take some spruce resin, some spruce pitch, blend it with a carrier oil. We would have an instant medicine, something that would help make the skin supple. They're great for joint inflammation, joint pain, and they're great for the respiratory system. You can make the best chest balms from simple spruce sap or pine sap and a carrier oil. There are a lot of phytochemicals in the resin that once they're blended with oil, we can absorb them. There are many other oleo resins that we can use for the same purpose. There are all these types of elemi and copal have been used traditionally for a wide variety of skin issues in traditional medicine, wherever they grow. People use them. We can follow suit and make our own medicine. It's very simple. So I'm going to show you how you can make your own muscle rub or chest rub, cough balm very easily from the resins of the trees that grow in your neighborhood. Just using whatever you have in the kitchen. You don't need any special equipment. Anyone can do it. Let me show you how to make a therapeutic oil from raw spruce or pine resin. And this is an oil, once you have the medicated oil or the infused oil, you can turn it into a salve or a cream or a liniment. We have some spruce sap. Now it's very important to keep precise notes. And keeping notes is important because you want to be able to go back and duplicate it. Let's start with 56 grams, 60 grams of spruce sap. It's about 2 ounces. And usually I do a ratio of 1 part resin to 3 parts oil. So if I have 60 grams of sap, of resin, I'll need 180 grams of oil. So here we go. There we go, and 180. So that's, you can use olive oil or coconut oil or jojoba oil. It doesn't really matter, they all work. Some of them last longer, take longer to oxidize or go rancid. And there we are, 160 grams. Now heat helps facilitate the dissolution of resins in oils. The sap would probably dissolve in the oil over time, especially if it's very fresh and very liquid like this sap here. Remember, you can always buy some in the shop if you can't find some where you live. Heat facilitates this process. Now, we don't want to burn it. We want a controlled environment. So That's where we come to the water bath, also known as Bain Marie, or Maria's bath. It's said that Maria was an alchemist many hundreds of years ago when she developed this, but that's just a myth and a bit of folklore. A water bath is ancient high-tech that we've been using for probably thousands of years. What it is a thermoregulator. You cannot burn anything in a water bath. Water will only go up to 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. No matter how much heat you apply, your product will never go above that temperature, and that's what we want. Never put products you're making in the microwave or cook them in a pan on direct heat. A lot of these spruce resin is very flammable, as is beeswax. So you want to insert your vessel into the water bath, but you don't want to sit it on the bottom because there's a lot of heat coming up and it could crack your glass. So I always clamp my vessels. You could also use a pot for this. A pot within a pot, it doesn't matter as long as your material isn't in direct contact with the heat. Never plunge it into hot water. So always start your water bath cold, clamp your vessel, your glass vessel, and let the temperature of the glass vessel, the mason jar, or the laboratory beaker rise slowly with the temperature of the water. If you plunge glass into hot water, it could shatter, and it often does. So there you go. Clamp it to the side, not on the bottom, and don't plunge it into hot water. And it won't take very long. When you have a pure oleo resin like pine resin or spruce resin, it dissolves quickly. If it's very, very old, it'll take longer. And if you're using something like frankincense or myrrh, it's a completely different story because frankincense and myrrh also have water-soluble gum in them, which means they won't dissolve in water, they won't dissolve in oils, and they won't even dissolve in alcohol unless you crush them and grind them first. So I'll go over that in a later video. Now usually we'll have to filter any kind of extract like this. I'll show you how to do it once this has completely dissolved. And you can tell when it's dissolved or when there are chunks. Okay, so filtering solutions with resins and oils is done really easily with a metal mesh coffee filter. You can use a pillowcase, corner of a pillowcase, and squeeze it through, but it gets quite hot and it's easy to burn yourself with a pillowcase. I think this one fits better. There we go. It's the same thing. It's just a metal mesh coffee filter. And don't be afraid of the water reaching a boil. It won't damage anything. Some resins, like frankincense and myrrh that do have gum, need to sit in the water bath, the boiling water bath, for a long time. Spruce and pine resins don't. So our pine resin is dissolved in the oil. It's looks rather clear, but it's got little bits of bark and bugs and pine needles in it, so we need to filter it. So here we have a metal mesh coffee filter. There are lots of different styles. It doesn't matter which style you use, brass or gold or stainless steel. We have to remember that the pot is hot. So let's see. Beauty. Okay. See, our oil is relatively clear now. And I'm going to pour it through the filter, and then it'll be ready for lots of different applications. Now, as this oleo extract of pine ages and sits, some of the resin will sediment, but it doesn't really matter. It's great stuff. It's still soft. It's just a heavier portion of the resin acids. Okay. Now we have a filtered oleo resin. We've taken out all the bark and bits. I'm going to add our filtered oleo resin back into the water bath, because what we're going to make is a salve. It's very simple. You could also make a cream. You could use any kind of resin oleo extract to make as the oil phase of a emulsified cream. But making a salve is the simplest, easiest thing to do at home. As you see, you use your kitchen pots and jars and utensils. We're going to wait for it to heat up a bit. Now, adding beeswax, there's no perfect formula. I'm not going to tell you to put 1 part beeswax or 2 or 3 or 4. You just put in enough till it's exactly the right consistency that you want. Sometimes you want a hard salve, sometimes you want something really smooth and creamy, so you want less thickener in it, less beeswax. And of course, beeswax also adds a lovely fragrance to your already fragrant oleo extract. I'm going to put in a half bar, if it'll let me. There we go. 1/2 ounce. You can grate your beeswax on a grater and it will dissolve more quickly, but you'll have to scrub that grater afterwards, and to be honest, it's a lot easier just waiting for a chunk of beeswax to melt rather than having to use hot water and soap and scrub a kitchen grater. I start with a little bit of beeswax because you can always add more, but if you put in too much beeswax and you end up with a really thick product, you're kind of stuck unless you have extra oil that you can add. The way I test the amount of thickener or beeswax along the way is simply on a room temperature surface. I'll do drop tests, just like candy. We'll wait till most of the beeswax is dissolved here. And you can tell, if you put a drop on the aluminum foil, it'll cool quickly, and you'll be able to tell if it's at the right consistency. That little nub of beeswax is almost dissolved. Let's see how thick our product is. So you can use a spoon, or just as long as you get a little bit. Put it somewhere away from the heat and let it cool for a few minutes. I know people want a precise formula, how much of this and how much of that, but you gotta learn for yourself. This is gonna take a little bit longer to cool. The salve is still very thin. It needs more beeswax. So I'm gonna add in the other 1/2 ounce, and we'll let that dissolve. So it's thickened up a bit, but not thick enough. If I put this in a tin, it'll still slosh around. So this is the Bain Marie. This is Maria's bath. And I really hope in a future video to really drill down into water baths, because really you can use anything as a water bath. And it's brilliant technology. It's so simple. No wonder we're still using it. I have a complex vacuum rotary evaporator, and the heart of it is the water bath. All it does is heat up the products up to 100 degrees. So what I like to do is to pour these products into containers. Winter's coming, coughs, colds, congestions, flus are increasing. It's a perfect time to make chest rubs for friends and family. And so easy to make. And you'll find more information on my blog about how to harvest spruce sap, how to make balms, salves, creams, all sorts of good stuff. Now, the problem with working with resins, especially fresh resins like spruce and pine, is that they're really sticky. And it's easy to make a mess. It's easy to get sticky sap on yourself, on your clothes. It's a real pain. But there's a secret to removing it. Just like the vegetable oil dissolved the sap here and turned it into a manageable, non-sticky liquid, that's what you need to use. Wash your hands, scrub your hands with olive oil. The sap will dissolve, and then a little bit of warm water and soap. Your hands not only will be clean, they'll feel supple and renewed. Resins really do something for the skin. Once you've got your oleo extract, you can leave it in the same container, or you can pour it into tins. You have to be careful pouring it into glass containers because it's really hot. You have to wait till it cools a bit. Let's see. Yeah, very nice. Soft enough to to get out of the tin easily. And if you're going to add essential oils, you want to add them at the end in what's called the cool down period, because you don't want all your essential oils to evaporate from the heat and disappear. Wait till it's about 50-60 degrees Celsius, and then you can mix your essential oils in, and then you can go ahead and pour it. I've measured them out here. Just 2% of the weight of my salve. I'll mix these in. Wonderful. Okay, now we're ready to pour into whatever vessels we want. We can pour into glass because if we want, because it's cooled down enough that it won't shatter the glass. Dollar store is great for all sorts of containers. This is my favorite for pouring salves, and sometimes I'll pour hundreds of salves. So here we go. Now, chest balm, it's a universal gift. I mean, who doesn't need a chest balm in the winter, or a muscle rub? And there's so many things you can add to it essential oil-wise. A muscle rub, I add St. John's wort oil to it, which isn't an essential oil, but it's specific for nerves and the joints, great for sciatica, great for muscle problems. So combined with the pine sap, it really is an effective medium. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it useful and informative. There are more videos on the way, so feel free to subscribe so you don't miss any, and we'll see you at the next video.